This story takes place in a town I once called home. A quaint, peaceful little place nestled between rolling hills and sleepy lakes. The kind of town where everybody knows your name, your parents' names, and most likely your entire childhood history. I hadn't lived there in years, but that didn't mean I didn't remember it. Far from it. See, over the weekend, my wife and I made a trip back for a wedding. Well, what was supposed to be a wedding? A local girl was getting married, and while I hadn't seen her in years, we'd grown up just a few houses apart. She and her brother were both 2 years younger than me. Their parents were good people, solid, honest folks. And the kids, well, they were something else. When they were little, they were always at each other's throats in that playful sibling rivalry kind of way.
You know the type.
One would hide the other's homework, the other would fill the siblings' shoes with whipped cream. Classic pranks, nothing malicious, just mischievous. As they got older, though, their practical jokes escalated, especially the sister. She was sharp, clever, and had a flair for the dramatic, often pushing things just a bit too far. Take prom night, for instance. I'll never forget that story. Her brother had been dating this really sweet girl. Prom night was a big deal for him. He got in a new tux, polished up his dad's old car, and even had a little bouquet of fresh white lilies for his date. The whole evening was supposed to be perfect, except it wasn't. Because that night, while he was getting ready, completely unaware of the storm brewing, his sister decided to play what she thought would be her most epic prank yet. She replaced his shampoo with hair removal cream. He washed his hair, just like he always did, dried it off, got dressed, sprayed on a little cologne, and headed out the door. It wasn't until about 20 minutes into the drive that he noticed the itching, then the burning, and then the hair
Falling. In.
clumps. He panicked, pulled over at a gas station, ran to the bathroom, and tried to figure out what the hell was going on. But it was too late. His scalp looked like a patchy old rug. He had no choice but to shave it all off, right there at the gas station using one of those awful disposable razors from the mini-mart. He went to prom completely bald. No explanation, no way to fix it, just him, a shiny head, and a date who couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. Now you might think that's where the story ends. Embarrassing, sure. Traumatizing? Maybe a little. But that boy? He didn't throw a fit. He didn't scream or yell. He didn't even tell his parents the full extent of what happened until much later. He just waited. And I mean really waited. See, a few months after prom, I moved away, got a job in the city, started a family. Over the years, I kept in touch with him sporadically. A few texts here and there, the occasional email. He'd gone off to college, landed a good job, and eventually settled down near his parents. Good kid turned into a good man. Fast forward 9 years. I get an invitation in the mail. Well, actually it was an invite because, millennials. It was from the sister, the same one who'd pulled the hair removal stunt. She was getting married and throwing what sounded like a massive celebration. Black tie optional, open bar, catered dinner, the works. Her fiancé came from money. She came from a well-off family, and they weren't sparing a dime. And since my parents still lived in that same small town, and the wedding aligned with one of our free weekends, my wife and I figured, why not? We could visit family, drop the kids off with my brother at our old lake cabin for a couple of days, and enjoy a kid-free evening of music, dancing, and catching up. We packed our bags, drove the 4 hours back, and settled in. The morning of the wedding, everything seemed normal. The weather was sunny, the birds were chirping, and my kids were already hyped up about jumping into the freezing lake water. We were just finishing breakfast when I got a strange text. It was from the bride's dad. Wedding canceled. Reception still happening. Come to the hall at 5 p.m. for food, drinks, and fun. Wait, what? My wife raised an eyebrow. Canceled? What happened? No details were given. Just that vague text. But we figured maybe there was a family emergency or cold feet. Either way, we weren't about to waste an adult-only evening, so we got dressed up and went to the venue. Now, this wasn't some backyard barbecue. This was a full-blown elegant affair. Crystal centerpieces, a live jazz band, filet mignon on the menu, and enough floral arrangements to make a bee cry tears of joy. But no bride, no groom, just the guests, confused but game to enjoy the night, and the bride's family, including her brother. And he looked smug. The kind of smug that oozes off someone who knows something you don't. His tie was slightly loosened. He was nursing a glass of whiskey, and he had this tiny, almost imperceptible smile. Naturally, I had to ask. "Hey," I said, approaching him during cocktail hour. "What's going on? Where's the wedding?" He took a sip of his drink and looked me straight in the eye. "Remember prom night?" he asked. It took me a second, but then I laughed. "Of course. That was brutal. She ever apologize?" He shrugged. "Not really. She said it was just a joke. I've been waiting 9 years." I stared. "Wait, you're telling me?" He nodded, grinning now. "Last night, she took a late shower. I offered to bring her a fresh towel and swapped her shampoo." I blinked.
No.
"You didn't." "Oh, I did," he said. "Same brand of hair removal cream." She didn't notice. "This morning, she woke up with her pillow covered in hair." My jaw dropped. "She thought she was dying," he continued. "Thought it was stress, nerves, something medical. By the time she looked in the mirror and saw the bald patches, she lost it. Absolute meltdown. She screamed for 2 hours and locked herself in her room. She's refusing to come out, refusing to be seen by anyone, and definitely refusing to get married today." I was speechless. He just clinked his glass against mine. 9 years, he repeated. "I waited 9 years. And let me tell you, it was worth every second." As more people arrived and the news spread, the entire event took on a bizarre tone. Half the guests were sympathetic. The other half were just amused. Her parents? Well, they were upset. Of course, they were. But surprisingly, they didn't lash out at their son. Her dad just shook his head and muttered. She had it coming. Her mom was quieter, but I overheard her saying something about consequences and teaching moments. The groom's side of the family, though, they were pissed. His mother was fuming, demanding answers, while the groom himself just looked shell-shocked. Apparently, he didn't know about the prom story or how far these sibling pranks used to go. But what could you do? The bride refused to be seen. She wouldn't even leave the upstairs bedroom of her parents' house, where she'd holed up since the morning. All that money, all that planning, and not a single "I do" in sight. And yet, the party continued. We drank. We danced. We ate more shrimp cocktail than any one person should reasonably consume. And through it all, the brother mingled like a king who'd just conquered a petty war. At one point, my wife turned to me and whispered, "Do you think this is the pettiest wedding sabotage ever?" I laughed.
No.
"This is justice."
She grinned.
Cold as ice. Served bald, I added. And the best part? The DJ still did the first dance song. No bride, no groom. Just a slow romantic ballad with nobody on the dance floor while everyone stood around awkwardly sipping champagne. It was beautiful. So yeah, the wedding was canceled. The reception turned into a party. And the legend of the great hair removal revenge of 2025 will live on in that town forever. I'm sure of it. But as I stood there that evening, watching the chandeliers glitter above the crowded reception hall, and hearing the quiet hum of conversations and jazz blending into a strange symphony of confusion and amusement, something else stirred in me. It wasn't just shock or laughter. It was curiosity. I wanted to know more. Not just what had happened today, but what had gone on behind the scenes for all those years. Because this wasn't just a prank. This was a plan. A perfectly timed, cold-served dish of revenge. Years in the making. And only someone deeply hurt, someone who carried that wound quietly through college lectures, job interviews, and family dinners, could pull it off with this kind of precision. I made my way back to the bar, where the brother, let's call him Jake, was chatting with 2 guys I didn't recognize. He looked up and nodded as I approached. His eyes still held that same satisfied glint. "You really planned this, didn't you?" I asked, no judgment in my tone, just awe. He smirked. "Every detail." "Even the shampoo bottle?" "I bought the exact same brand she used when we were teenagers," he said. "Ordered it online months ago. I've had it in my closet waiting for the right moment." My eyebrows raised. "And you're sure she didn't notice?" She was too focused on everything else: wedding hair, nails, fittings, timelines. I played the helpful brother. Said I'd take care of her towel while she was in the shower. Swapped it out in less than 30 seconds. I took a long sip of my drink. Jake, that's methodical. He didn't answer right away. Then he leaned in a bit, voice lower now. She laughed, after prom. Laughed for weeks. Told everyone. My date dumped me a week later. I had to wear a beanie through senior year photos. She made it her mission to humiliate me. I nodded slowly. He continued. It wasn't just the shampoo. It was what came after. The snide comments. The jokes. The time she replaced my final project USB with one filled with SpongeBob memes. I failed that class. It wasn't harmless fun. It was sabotage. He straightened up, his voice clear now. And everyone let her get away with it because she was clever and pretty and smiled while doing it. But I remembered. This was deeper than a joke. This was justice. And Jake, the quiet kid who never yelled or fought back, had grown into a man who knew how to wait. He had patience most of us couldn't dream of. By the time dinner was served, people were no longer whispering about the missing bride. They were telling stories about Jake and his legendary payback. Old neighbors, distant cousins, even the DJ came over to ask, "Did you really?" He'd nod. And every time he did, the circle around him grew. But not everyone was amused. Around dessert, I noticed the groom's father speaking angrily, with the bride's parents in the corner. His hands flailed, his face red. I overheard just enough to catch words like humiliation, lawsuit, and irreparable damage. Things were escalating. And then came the twist none of us expected. Jake's sister, yes, the bride, finally emerged. Not fully, but just enough. The grand entrance hall opened, and there she stood behind the glass double doors, wrapped in a thick white bathrobe and wearing a hoodie over her head. Her face was red and streaked with tears. Her hair, what was left of it, peeked out in patches from the sides. She didn't step into the room, just looked at everyone. At first, there was silence. Then the murmuring began. Jake turned, his eyes locking onto hers. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I hope it was worth it." Jake didn't flinch. He didn't gloat or smirk. He just replied calmly, "It was." And then she turned and walked back upstairs. The room buzzed with tension. Guests shifted in their seats. A few people whispered, "Poor girl," but most just nodded, as if some long unspoken balance had finally been restored. What followed was a surreal dinner. No toasts, no cake cutting, no bouquet toss, just good food, low conversation, and the haunting feeling that we had just witnessed something raw, uncomfortable, and somehow deeply satisfying. The party went late. Around midnight, people began drifting out in small clusters, some still shaking their heads, others laughing quietly. My wife and I left hand in hand, the warm summer air wrapping around us as we walked to our car. In the quiet of the drive back to my parents' place, she asked, "Do you think they'll ever speak again?" I thought about it, about all the years of jokes, the hurt, the cold silence that must have built up. "I don't know," I said, "but maybe now they'll finally be honest with each other." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how thin the line is between love and resentment, how easily a laugh can turn into a wound when it comes from someone you trust. Jake's revenge was dramatic, yes, but it wasn't just about hair. It was about being seen, being taken seriously, about reclaiming dignity that had been stripped away one prank at a time. The next morning, I went out for coffee and ran into Jake sitting on a bench near the town square. He looked tired, less smug now, more thoughtful. "Hey," I said, sitting beside him. "Morning," he replied. We sat for a while in silence. "Do you regret it?" I finally asked. He rubbed his chin. "A little. Not the act, but the aftermath." "She looked pretty broken," I said. "She'll bounce back," he said. "She always does. And maybe this time she'll understand what it felt like." I nodded. "So what now?" He shrugged. "Life goes on. She'll recover. I'll keep living. We'll either talk again someday or we won't. And with that, we parted ways. But I knew this story. This one moment in a sleepy town's history would live on far longer than the broken wedding vase or the canceled ceremony. This was the story of a brother who waited 9 years, who kept a quiet promise, who remembered what everyone else forgot. And when the moment came, he didn't yell. He didn't explode. He simply returned the favor and made sure the world knew. Revenge is best served bald. A few days passed, and the dust began to settle. But the story didn't fade. Not yet. In fact, it did the exact opposite.
You know how small towns are.
Word spreads faster than wildfire in a dry cornfield. By Tuesday morning, just about every gas station, barbershop, church group, and hardware store in town was buzzing with the tale. Some of the older folks were outraged, calling it disrespectful and a disgrace to family values. Others, especially those who remembered how the sister had acted as a teen, simply chuckled and muttered something about karma. Then, as if the universe wanted to make things even more surreal, someone leaked it online. It started as a local Facebook post from a wedding guest. Just a simple status. Was supposed to attend a wedding this weekend. Bride didn't show. Groom devastated. Turns out her brother replaced her shampoo with hair removal cream the night before to get back at her for doing the same to him on prom night. 9 years later. You can't make this up. It got picked up by a wedding drama subreddit. Then by TikTok. Then by the kind of viral story aggregators that thrive on chaos. By Thursday, the local news station had called the family for comment. And suddenly, the prank wasn't just between siblings. It was between them and the entire world. Jake told me later that he hadn't expected it to go viral, that he thought it would stay between their friends, family, and the people at the reception. But you can't control wildfire once it catches wind. People were taking sides. Team bride, team bald,
Team groom.
team everyone needs therapy.
Talk shows debated it.
TikTokers reenacted it. Hairstylists made reaction videos. Even a celebrity tweeted, "That man held onto his rage like it was aged whiskey. Respect." It became a spectacle, and not everyone was handling it well. The bride, let's call her Melissa, was staying with an aunt out of state, trying to escape the headlines. Her pictures from better days were being used in memes. Some people sympathized, others mocked, but very few remained neutral. The groom, well, that was complicated. He hadn't officially ended the engagement, not right away, at least. At first, he told mutual friends that he just needed space to process. That he still loved her, but didn't know how to move forward from a wedding that never happened. He'd been humiliated, yes, but it wasn't his battle. Or was it? Because the truth is, when you marry someone, you marry their family too. And what Jake did, while justified in many eyes, also exposed just how messy Melissa's family really was. I heard later that the groom's parents pushed hard for him to walk away. That the viral attention, the public embarrassment, and the hair, well, it was just too much. By the following week, the wedding was officially called off. Not postponed. Not rescheduled. Cancelled. I saw Jake again 2 weeks later. He wasn't celebrating anymore. He looked conflicted. "I didn't mean for it to get this big," he told me. "I just wanted her to know what it felt like. To be humiliated. To be the joke." "You succeeded," I said gently. "But you also ended her engagement." "She ended that herself," he muttered. "If your relationship can't survive a bad haircut, what was it built on anyway?" I didn't answer. Because in truth, I wasn't sure he was wrong. But revenge, even when it feels right, rarely leaves people whole. A month went by. Then 2. By the time fall rolled around, the town had mostly moved on. The story faded from headlines, though you could still find it archived under clickbait titles like "He ruined her wedding like she ruined his prom." TikTok had moved on to new scandals, new gossip. Jake had started seeing a therapist, his parents' idea. Not because he was crazy, but because they realized the years of silence between their kids had festered into something they'd never fully understood. Melissa returned home eventually, hair slowly growing back, pride slower still. She hadn't spoken to Jake. Not once. Until Thanksgiving, the family had decided, probably foolishly, to host a full dinner. All the kids, all the cousins, a turkey big enough to feed a football team. Everyone was nervous. The tension in the house was so thick you could slice it with a carving knife. Jake came late. Melissa was already there. When he walked in, she didn't greet him, didn't even look up from her plate. The dinner was quiet, too quiet. Everyone ate fast, as if chewing might mask the discomfort. Then, out of nowhere, their grandmother, who had gone partially deaf and entirely uninhibited with age, blurted out, "Well, at least no one's bald this time." Utter silence. Then, Melissa laughed. Just once. A short, unexpected burst. But it cracked the air like a thunderclap. Jake looked up. "I deserved it," she said, her voice low but steady. "The prom thing. I deserved payback.
Just not like that.
Not on my wedding day." Jake didn't argue. He nodded. "I know." Another pause. "Why did you wait so long?" she asked. "You could have gotten me back years ago." "Because I wanted you to feel it," he said. "Not just the hair thing. I wanted you to feel what it's like to be a punchline, to watch something important fall apart while people laugh." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I really didn't know how much it hurt you." They sat in silence. The rest of the table pretended not to listen. Then she said, "I don't forgive you. Not yet. But I understand." He nodded again. "Fair." And that was the beginning. Not of healing, maybe, but of honesty. 6 months later, they started talking again. Just texts at first. Then coffee.